Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beyond the Blade here on the Grandstand Sports Network, the best view in sports. I am your co-host, Chad DeDominicis.
And I'm your other host, Bill Shockey. And get off the beach, shake out the sand, Chad. Got to come back and do a recorded one. It's been a while.
Yeah. We just looked before the podcast started, and we both kind of laughed, like, oh, wow, the last recorded one was Vegas, when Vegas didn't even have a team yet.
Yeah.
So we had a few live ones in there, but, yeah, it's good to get a recorded one out of there. And then I guess kind of I was telling you, we talked about doing this on, like, last week, and then we talked about doing it on Sunday. And then, like, I texted you this morning, and I was like, the weekend just got away from me. It's just I feel like I'm on hockey vacation right now. So it's nice at least to get my head back in the game a little bit. But as soon as this podcast is over, I'm going back on hockey vacation. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, basically it was I woke up this morning and just realized we didn't do it. We didn't actually record last night. But, yeah, I got one buddy that's really big into fantasy hockey, and the talks are starting to ramp up a little bit. Mid-July, we still got like 2 weeks probably before the draft, but it's definitely getting me back, fired up, looking at stats for all players and
Right.
who within the Buffalo Sabres might I take a crack at this year?
So before we get into the offseason moves that happened, because there was a lot of moves and a lot of things that kind of happened before. It's the last time we spoke to our peeps here. But a few things I do want to mention is, first thing is, those of you who listen often might have noticed a new intro. So I want to give credit to one Matt Chiasa, who you've seen on here before probably. He did the mock draft with us. Matt has a SoundCloud page where he does different mix with music. Bill and I asked him to do that probably a while ago, like a month and a half ago, and he kind of surprised me randomly and go, yeah, here you go. Here's your Sabres mix. And it sounds pretty good. So we're going with that as a new intro. So I want to give Matt some credit there. And the other part is, you heard in the intro and probably heard it last time we spoke to with the recorded, and now they're actually getting flowing. Grandstand Sports Network, new partnership. The network will be on. I actually I guess you could say, the co-founder with a buddy of mine, Eric, who most of you maybe Buffalo listeners know, who runs Cover One Bills. So we actually have that going. We're very close to launching the site and the station. We've had a few test runs. Everything looks like it's smooth, but pretty exciting stuff there with all that, Bill, because it's not just Buffalo stuff. It's sports from all over. So we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, there's been a lot of announcements of adding podcasts. It seems like one a day for about a week and a half. So
yeah.
you do the math. Yeah, it's an exciting venture, and just kind of excited to get BTB going bigger. We got a lot of things in the works here at BTB, so that can only help us further grow and further get to where we want to be.
Yes, sir. So now that we got the shout-outs out of the way, I guess you could say, let's jump into the hockey talk here. So quick recap to get kind of maybe our minds freshened back into this, and maybe for those people who don't know or even forgot what the Sabres actually did over the last couple of weeks, let's run down the offseason moves really quick here. Foligno and Ennis are gone to Minnesota for Marco Scandella and Jason Pominville, who's back. And then there's some free agent signings. Benoit Pouliot, who I really like, we'll talk about here in a little bit. 1 year, $1.15 million. Chad Johnson's back as the backup for a 1-year contract. I think that was around $2 million, if not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob Josephson, 1 year, one-way contract. That's pretty interesting. So we'll get into that. And then these next few guys here, I guess you could say it's pretty interesting that Rochester got some love here. I'll run down the names. Seth Griffith, Matt Tennyson, Kyle Crisculo, might have messed up that name. Kevin Porter is back again. And Adam Wilcox as a goaltender to sit behind Jonas Johansson in Rochester. Like I said, we'll start with the Rochester angle first. It's kind of nice to see a GM who actually cares about the system again.
Yeah, not only that, it just comes back to kind of what we didn't see as much with the previous, coach and GM was a guy who says what he's going to do and then actually goes out and does it. Not only with Rochester, but a little bit more with the speed, the analytics, the puck possession. You see that a little bit in the Pominville pickup. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry.
Just keep going. I'll cut it out.
All right. You see that? Yeah, you see that with Pominville, even though obviously he was a throw-in for Minnesota for cap relief, but, top 10, 5-5 scorer in the NHL last year. Scandella is a good pickup to kind of shore up the defense. You basically overhauled half the defense. So it's kind of a sit back and see what you got this year. And then you can kind of make a splash if you need it next year. I think that's kind of why they went the trade route and not the big splash like Shattenkirk this offseason. Not necessarily that he would have come here anyways, but it looked like he was heart set in New York. But, yeah, I mean –
he took a lesser deal to go there.
Yeah, and he even said it's, childhood dream. But, I mean, that's 5 guys right there that were just, pickups for strictly Rochester to make Rochester a better team. They haven't been good in many years. And I think especially you see that too, not only with the 5 guys that are picked up for Rochester, but guys like Pouliot and Josephson, who potentially will be in your bottom 6 this year, keeping guys that maybe be ready, but maybe not be ready. A couple months down in Rochester wouldn't hurt them. So you might see guys like maybe Bailey Baptiste, Fashing start down there because you have the guys that can fill in up here, which can only make Rochester better even more so.
So let's do this. I mean, we mentioned Pouliot. We mentioned Josephson. I mean, I think Josephson, the one-way contract is pretty interesting, honestly. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, another guy for Rochester. And then I kind of double-checked. I'm like, oh, wait, this is one-way deal. So that kind of maybe Bottle sees him as that fourth-line guy. But where I want to go here, because we want to talk about the division here after. Then we're going to get into development camp, and then we're kind of going to wrap up with some more stuff. Maybe it's on the horizon we could see happen here throughout the remainder of the summer. Let me throw this up here so people can see. Give me 1 second. So we put this together on Beyond the Blade on our WordPress page. So here's the lines, kind of how I put it together with Kane, O'Reilly, Oposo, Nylander, Eichel, Reinhart, Pouliot, Larson, Pominville, Jurgensen, Josephson, Fashing, Molson the extra, and then you can see the defense and Leonard and Johnson. Bill, but from talking with you, maybe had things a little bit different. Maybe you had Bailey in there, but all in all, what I kind of wanted to start with here maybe is that third line. That's a pretty decent third line. Pouliot, Larson, and Pominville. I mean, they can play well defensively, and they can get you secondary scoring, which was a big issue for the Sabres last year.
Hey, and not only that, it's a good second power play unit. Ideally, having Pominville with, Kane and Pouliot, it's going to be a lot better than Kane, Gianta, Molson.
Right.
So I think that's going to only help on the second power play unit, not the, all right, minute 15 of the first unit, and if they don't score, hopefully you don't get scored on. But, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change much. Nylander, I don't know which one of those kids is the one that makes it. I think the concerning thing, and I didn't expect Botterill necessarily to do it this offseason, but unless one of those kids does step up, you still don't have another winger for Jack. And it's been a problem now for basically the whole time he's been here.
Yeah, and then you're going to kind of bite your fingernails and maybe hope Pouliot or Pominville can step up into that role, which is, I don't know.
It scares me because it just sets you up for another, Foligno, Molson, Gianta, like those guys. I kind of see Pouliot and Pominville. I mean, no offense to Pominville, but he's getting up there in age, and he's not going to really be able to keep up with a guy like Jack Eichel, I don't think. So I have a bad feeling that if we go into, the season opener and it's Pouliot or Pominville on that wing with Reinhart and Eichel, I don't know how long it's going to be before people start getting frustrated about it. So, I mean, I dream is what you have on the screen right now, and that'd be Nylander. Does make the jump. He got bigger. He looked good. So, I mean, it's possible. I think he's still going to have one hell of a camp to pull that off. Jump basically from, time in Rochester to the second line in the NHL. But I would think just because of, seasonedness, I guess, is the word. I think Bailey's the one that makes the jump. He had a disappointing camp last year. He showed flashes in the NHL last year. But I think if he can come in and show at least the possession. He's looked bigger in the top half. So if he can, show the puck control, show his speed, because I really think he's got that speed to be able to keep up with those two. I look for him to be the guy that kind of makes the jump, at least to get the shot in the beginning, because that way then you still have all your guys like, C.J. Smith and Nylander and Baptiste and, Rodriguez probably. And that's still really good, for the AHL. It's a good young core that can score and put up points in the A. So, I mean, maybe it's Baptiste. I keep coming back to it. He did have a really nice goal with Michael last season, and he didn't get as much of a chance as I believe he should have. Bailey did get more of a chance. But, here we are again going into year 3. And we're still looking for that
winger for Eichel, yeah.
For Eichel, which is disappointing. I mean, the biggest problem was the defense, and he did do quite a bit with it. If it was good or not, we will see.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think this is the year to kind of, you overhauled half the defense, see who works with who, see who doesn't work, and go on from there. Ideally, if everything goes well, you just kind of, maybe get another guy next year because Georges will be gone, and you roll with it. But yeah, for the forwards, he did some stuff, but there's still a lot that can be done in the forward ranks.
Yeah.
So I would look again. It's just going to be another interesting training camp, and Derek Grant can't be the guy that comes out of training camp, as the one who stole the position. And I don't think it will with this coaching staff or with this front office. More the coaching staff. I think it was more Bilesma. Don't get me wrong, Derek Grant had a great camp, but I definitely think it's Bilesma who wanted to play him for 50 games and put him on the penalty kill and watch him score 0 goals.
The worst penalty kill in the league.
yeah, right. Which blows my mind. But yeah, I at least I don't want to say I know, but I think with what has been said and kind of what we've seen so far, I don't see that kind of happening with Housley and his coaching staff. So I look for, they look for speed. So I'm looking for a guy like probably Bailey or Nylander to make that jump. Because like you said, right now, if you have Larson, Pouliot, Palmerville on the third line, that's a solid third line. And Gergenson's Fashing maybe. I guess you could put like kind of any of those guys down there. But I know you've put Fashing there as kind of that big body to replace Foligno and Josephson. I mean, that's not a terrible fourth line. And I'll end this with probably my favorite of the whole thing. And I see you smiling because Matt Molson's on the outside looking in. So
I mean, I think at the end of the day, unfortunately, Molson probably takes Fashing's spot in that fourth line. But I would like the kid to take that spot. But I mean, maybe this coach staff doesn't care about the money because that's not the guy they signed. It's not their problem anymore, kind of deal,
I made that speech last year. I don't care. You could probably hear it in the season end rant of what we went through as just, he's making a lot of money, but it shouldn't matter. The GM needs to, get the best players to be able to put on the ice, and the coach needs to be able to put the best lineup on the ice every night. And if that's not Matt Molson, then he shouldn't be out there.
Right. So looking at this lineup here, as I'll come back to the video, I'll see if we can look at our pretty faces. To
be fair, that could mean Josephson too.
It could be.
I don't have to single out Molson, but
yeah, right. I mean, Gergenson's right. Gergenson's can go to the middle, and then it could be Fashing and Molson. Maybe Josephson's the guy looking out.
All right, and they still got to get signed.
Yes, just the Gergensons have to get signed. That's true. We'll talk about that at the end here. But as I was saying, it's looking at that roster. It's kind of like, is it a playoff team roster? I don't know. I mean, the defense is a lot better. Looking at that defense, I mean, that's night and day.
Ideally, they're a lot better.
Yes.
You don't know what Antipin's going to be, especially in the first half of the season.
Right.
Beaulieu, he was a high draft pick, but coming to a new team.
Yep. Scandell's going to play those first pair minutes. He really wasn't playing behind Suter in Minnesota.
Right. Can he fill those shoes? Can he fill in for the amount of time that Ristolainen is going to put up? Not that it needs to be 30 minutes a night anymore, but 25 to 28 minutes a night is still a lot. And if a guy like Scandella hasn't necessarily been doing that, that's going to be something he's got to get used to. So I said it before. I look for the defense to maybe struggle early.
I agree with that.
I wouldn't get on them right away. But if you're looking, 40, 50 games down the road and you're still seeing like mental issues like we were seeing last year, then we might have an issue. But I really think that you're going to see guys out of position. You're going to see guys get caught, and it's going to be because of the new system being implemented. But again, ideally, you're going to see a lot more, offensive chances and potentially scoring. And McCabe had a lot of chances last year. He just didn't finish. Ristolainen, I just believe, was too tired, and he wasn't able to do what he needed to do offensively.
I was looking at stats the other day. It was kind of funny. You mentioned McCabe, and I think he had like 2 or 3 goals. But, I mean, if you think about it, how many goals could McCabe possibly have had last year? He could easily had probably 10 easily. I mean, I think it was at least once a week, if not twice a week. I was like, oh, my God, he missed the net. He had it. Like, it was wide open. Shot over the net.
A couple times he was in a high slot, shot over the net. Other times he was doing exactly what he was supposed to do, kind of Bogosian style, crashing the net, finds the puck on his stick, right back door, throws in the goalie's pads. You just got to lift the kid. So things like that, ideally it'll change. It'll get better. But is it a playoff team? I would say things have to go right. But if we get into it, I think one way that things can go right is the division's not that good.
That's where I was headed. It's interesting. I mean, this might be the most open division in hockey. Honestly, as I'm saying, I'm sitting here thinking about it. I mean, the Metro is the Metro. I mean, it's open, but you kind of have your teams at the top, right? I mean, it's open between those 4 teams. But like the Atlantic, really, I mean, besides Detroit, I mean, I could honestly, maybe besides Detroit and Buffalo, but you never know with Buffalo if they get off to a good start and things click. I mean, really, it's any team's divisions, though. I mean, Toronto's going to be good this year probably, but look, like you've said a few times on Twitter to me, looking at that roster, it's not scaring me. I mean, they added Ron Haynes to their defense. I don't know. They're supposed to be. They're better on defense. I think he's kind of slow, right?
Patrick Marleau,
right? I mean,
so
what are you going to? I mean, he's going to be 39 years old, I think, or 38 when the season starts. I mean, maybe you'll get a year out of him, but I've been signed to 3 years. 1 to 3 years.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
and I think he'll be 39 going into next year.
So that's crazy. And then, Florida is. I don't. I don't know what Florida is, to be honest. I mean, that Marchessault and Riley Smith thing still is odd to me, but I don't know. I mean, I guess they're getting Barkov and Huberdeau back, so if they're healthy, maybe that changes things for them. I know the team we expect them to be last year, but maybe the defense isn't as good, and no Yager.
So I mean, Florida is Florida might be the biggest question mark for me this year.
Yeah,
they got some good players. They have potentially a good defense again. But again, Luongo is now a year older, so I don't.
Hold on. Go.
Yeah, honestly, I think Florida for me is probably the biggest question mark of the division this year. I really don't know what they're going to be because they were really good 2 years ago. We expected them to be really good again last year. Yes, they had a lot of injuries, but I mean, even with those injuries, it's not like they, stayed afloat at all. They kind of just fell off a cliff. Luongo, a year older, he's good, but he's getting up there in age. They do have a really good backup in Reimer, so maybe that helps if he plays maybe more than a backup usually would. Take some pressure off Luongo. Maybe that's kind of how they can at least help that. But, I mean, just overall, the defense should be good. The forwards, I mean, like you said, I still don't understand the Riley and Marchessault thing with Vegas. So unless they have guys coming up this year that maybe we're not really expecting, maybe like a Rocco Grimaldi. I mean, other than that, I don't know. They took Krause too, right? And but no one really expects him to do too much, at least.
Well, he's actually in Arizona. They traded him last year.
That's right. Yep.
So you don't even have him either.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. I mean, unless Barkov and Huberdeau just kind of go off this year.
I mean, Bukestad gets back to where the guy he was. I mean, he
hasn't been that guy for a couple of years though. So
right.
I don't know. Florida's maybe they get to 90. Maybe they don't. They had a couple of injuries, and they could be in trouble again. I think it might just come down to their front office too. It's just a mess. They're hiring guys, they're firing guys, they're deciding they're going all analytics. It doesn't work for 1 year because
they fire everybody and say,
they
"Oops,
fire the whole
mistake."
department. Right? Yeah. So I think Florida doesn't even know what they are inside the department, let alone outside.
Yeah.
So good luck trying to guess what Florida's going to be.
Right.
Ottawa, I guess I won't bash them for now.
Right. I mean, they went to the conference finals, right? So, I mean, but again, looking at their roster, you're like, I don't know. What scares me on that team? Matt Hoffman?
Eric Carlson. That's it.
Eric Carlson, yeah. I mean, that's
a hot Craig Anderson.
Yeah, does Anderson have a great year again? I mean, I don't know. Does Peugeot have a great year again? I mean, Kyle Turris is a pretty good hockey player, but Bobby Ryan's getting older. I don't know. I mean, Stone is there too, but like I said, I'm not going to bash them into the conference finals. I mean, maybe that Guy Boucher system works again. Maybe it doesn't. Who knows? And then, speaking of interesting teams, the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, they get Carey Price on a monster contract. Good luck with that. They have no defense. They still have no centers. I mean, at least they're going to keep Galchenyuk play with Druin, so that's good for now, at least. I mean, he signed a contract with no movement clause and no trade clause, so that's probably not a good thing. Makes him pretty movable now at a cheap cap hit. So I don't know. I mean, I could see Montreal really start to fall off a cliff next year. And
yeah, me too.
I mean, if Bergevin gets dumped, and then you're going to have a new GM come in with a Carey Price $10.5 million goaltender, that could be hard to – I mean, it's the Montreal Canadiens. They'll get themselves a GM, but, that could be a team if things go really south this year. They could find themselves in the middle of a rebuild.
I mean, you got to remember, though, they do have a really good coach.
Yep.
And, if Carey Price gets hot, then they're going to be good. But I don't know if he falters at all, kind of like he did a little bit last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he got Zach Hyman centering Druin and Galchenyuk.
Yep.
So I don't know how that's going to work out. But, yeah, Montreal, they're always a good regular season team, but they're just never scary in the playoffs at all. So I can kind of see them falling off. But we called Detroit about 3 years too early. So
it's true.
I'm
doing the same thing kind of here.
I'm not ready to write Montreal off just yet. Maybe next year. But
yeah.
But honestly, a team that I thought was going to fall off a lot last year, and now kind of here we are this year. And I think they might actually be still pretty good, and it's Boston.
Yeah, they got some really good kids coming. Really, all of a sudden,
they had nobody.
A couple of years ago, you looked at their prospect pool, like, hey, you said, geez, they're in a lot of trouble, and then all of a sudden, they got a lot of kids. Charlie McAvoy looks really good. Yep. Anders Bjork looks really good. Pasternak came out of nowhere. Carlo came out of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they
still
still
have some good kids coming.
Yeah, they can still move Spooner for something.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, and Bergeron and Marchand, those guys obviously still have a couple years left.
Yeah, Krejci too. Chara's probably got another year probably left in him.
Maybe if Boston's lucky, he only has a year left.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Tuukka Rask is Tuukka Rask,
Yeah, if Tuukka Rask stays Tuukka Rask, then Boston should be another good team next year. So I'd probably look for, Toronto, Tampa Bay. We didn't even touch on Tampa Bay, but I just, they're probably the one team you can probably bet on being good.
Yeah, I still think it's Tampa. At the end of the day, I still think it's Tampa Bay's division. They're getting Stamkos back. They got some help on defense. I know Vasilevsky finally takes over the show, but I really like him. I think they'll be fine in goal. And, I mean, Steve Yzerman did the Steve Yzerman thing again. He got great contracts for Palat and Johnson. I know Johnson's kind of a long time, but Palat, those are two contracts, just over $5 million. I mean, somehow he drugged Kucherov into taking like a 4-point-something. I mean, it's crazy to think about Kucherov makes less money than those two guys for the next 2 years at least.
Yeah. Well, because, I mean, he might go, though, in 2 years because –
yeah, that's true.
If he does anything close to what he did last year for the next 2 years, he's going to be looking for, 8+.
Yeah.
But
the way contracts are going now, he might be in the 10 range by the time that comes around.
But yeah, no, Tampa Bay should be good. I mean, I guess the only question mark would kind of be goaltending, for the full year. But I think Vasilevsky will be able to do it. You got Hedman, Sergachev might play for the full year, and he looked really good. in
They saw
Montreal last
Strowman
year.
there. They
Yep.
have some kids coming up. They have the Brandon Point, who I think he's not going to be Druin, but I think he can, fill in pretty well.
Yeah, he played a little bit last year. He scored quite a bit, so
Yep.
he should be a nice filler for cheap. And like you said, you got your usual guys. You got Johnson, Platt, Korn, or not Korn, but Johnson, Platt, Stamkos.
Yep.
You got the trip, half of the or most of the triplets, anyways, and then.
Yeah, I think having Stamkos back would be huge for them for the full season. I mean, if he could stay healthy the full season, I think that'll go a long way. I mean, when he got hurt last year, a lot of us said, well, they made the playoff run without him, but it turns out maybe he is more important than people actually gave him credit for when he went down.
Especially in the regular season. It's hard to make up that, goal every other night, goal 2 out of 3 nights.
That power play shot from the corner, he can just hammer that one home.
Yeah, so I mean, as of right now, I'd probably put Tampa, Toronto, Boston as my top 3.
Yeah, I think so too.
Not necessarily in any order, but Buffalo definitely will have their work cut out for them. Toronto, though, man, I
keep saying they're going to be in there, but I don't know. I think
I want to be the one to call it and just say just because they
had
so
much
lucky
luck last year, exactly,
with injuries, and all of their rookies played really well.
You think someone's going to hit a slump at some point this year, right? Those kids all aren't going to go off as they did last year all year long.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Matthews or Marner are going to hit a slump, but Brown, Hyman, all those kids played really well last year. And
Zaitsev.
Yeah, he's another one that he got signed for a long time, and it could be risky, off of 1 year, but we'll see. And then Anderson too. He started off so bad.
Yeah.
Then he kind of found his game, and they started to take over. But I mean, the thing for me too is not only just the slump for the second year, but they were just so lucky with injuries. I think they had 10 guys play over 79 games. That's insane. Crazy. That never happens in the NHL. To think that'll happen 2 years in a row. I mean, they have Babcock, so they'll probably be good. They'll probably be good again. But man, I could really see them, hitting some kind of bump that no one really saw coming, and maybe them just missing next year. But we'll kind of see how it goes here as we kind of get in the camp and as the season, starts.
So speaking of camp, we just had a camp here last week. We had prospect development camp for the Sabres. We got to get a look at almost. There was a few guys who weren't there, but most of the Sabres prospect, including Casey Middlestat, the first-round pick this year. And I got to say, Bill, I went to a few of the things here. I was pretty impressed with the prospects pool. I love the Sabres. I think it's definitely gone down from where it was a few years ago when they were one of the best in the leagues. But, there's a lot of kids that can skate and have some skill, within that pool. And it was kind of good to see for me, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't able to catch the 3-on-3 tournament. I know you were able to stop up for a little bit. Obviously, I saw the highlights. Middlestat's goal was pretty nasty. Up looked pretty good in goalie. Yep. So, that's a good thing. He looked pretty smooth. He was moving side to side pretty well. He made a couple really big saves from the highlights that I saw. But for me, when it comes to development camp is, I know that they have their practices in the scrimmage and they have the 3-on-3 tournament, but it really isn't too much of what's done on the ice during development camp. It's what do they look like as they come into development camp. And that's the important thing when you're going to see guys like we said Nylander needed to get bigger and Bailey needed to work on, his strength. And if he was going to be that power forward that Buffalo needs and Baptiste could put on a little weight and Goulet especially. Right. So for me, the biggest thing was to hear that, man, Nylander looks a lot bigger. Bailey from the waist up, he looks really big in the shoulders. Goulet definitely went and put on some weight. That to me is the important thing. That's what those kids needed to do coming into development camp. You need to see them really putting the work in with nutrition and the weight room so that when they're coming into training camp, their bodies are ready. They're ready to go. They're ready to protect the puck, get in the corners, do the things that they're going to have to do to win those battles. And those are the little things that are going to get you onto the roster on opening night. So for me, that's what makes training camp even more interesting, is when you're hearing things like those guys are putting in the work that they need to in the off season to get ready for training camp. It makes it even more interesting because it leads you to believe that they have more of a shot, to make that training camp roster, or make it the roster coming out of training camp. So yeah, I mean, development camp's nice. You get to see all the prospects, you get to see the new draft picks, and don't get me wrong, they look good. Even Asplund too. I don't want to forget him.
Yeah, and he won that award. I forgot what it's called, but he won that award, for the hardest working player in camp. So
yeah, so I mean, like him, just because he's overseas, I don't want to forget him, because I really do think he's going to be a key contributor, not next year, but probably in 2 years.
Yep.
But like I said, even with all that going on, I mean, you could have had somebody just light up development camp, and I'd still come in here and tell you that I'd be more impressed with the guys who are putting in the work and came in, 15, 20 pounds heavier than last season, because it means that they're really looking to make the big club this year.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of threw up here. It might be hard to see because of the way the screen's set up here, but I threw up the prospect rankings here that we put together on our website. And, I'll kind of give my recap of it. I had my 5 guys who stood out to me. And there was more, but I guess I kept it to 5. Middlestat was 1. I was going back and forth on Brandon a little bit on Twitter, and Brandon's the guy, if you remember in our mock draft, that I think he had Middlestat in the top 3, didn't he? He was big on Middlestat, and he tweeted me, he's like, the Middlestat stand up to the hype that I had him under, and he really did. I mean, it's kind of surprising that. I mean, again, I don't want to get carried away. It's development camp, but I mean, for a kid who can skate, shoot, and stick handle as well as he can, I mean, it's crazy to think that he dropped all the way to 8. Was it because he couldn't do a pull up? Was that really the reason why he dropped? Which is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked a little bit bigger just at camp from when I saw him at scouting combine. I mean, it could be different because you have equipment on, but he did look a little bit bigger. I'm not saying it was a lot, but a little bit. But he's such a smooth skater. He's a quick skater. I mean, yeah, like you said, his one goal was impressive, but the one that people didn't see, they changed shifts every 45 seconds, so the buzzer would go off and that'd be on the shift. You had to go to the bench, but he was coming down a rush. He was going end to end, and he literally skated through the entire team. He went through one guy at center ice, went inside on one defender, back outside again, and then back inside again. The buzzer went, and so that was enough for a beautiful play. But he was really exciting to see, so that was good. Asplund was playing well, especially in the tournament. He had that little bit of a pest to him in the tournament. Behind the play, he was hitting guys in the back of the leg, skating up the ice. So that was kind of interesting to see. I never really saw that side of him. And then Gooley stood out. Bailey didn't really stand out to me during the drills, but during the game, I texted you and told you during the game, not only his size, the way he skated and played, he literally looked like a man amongst boys out there. He was easily the biggest guy on the ice, maybe next to Fashing, who I thought was pretty good too. But, I mean, Bailey's combination of size and speed is so intriguing if he can just find ways to put the puck in the back of the net. Because if you remember last year, he had the opportunity to score goals, and he just seemed like he could never finish. If he can start finishing on those goals, I mean, his combination of size and speed, and he somehow crazily looks bigger than he was the year before. So, I mean, that's cool to see. Nylander was bigger. He played really well too. And like you said, UPL, he was impressive too throughout all of camp. He moves very quick side to side for such a big dude. So he was impressive to watch, and maybe that's exciting too to have that guy behind Omar. Peterson just went, but to have him come in and look as good as he did, that's kind of cool to see. But I mean, looking at it now, I mean, the one thing with the prospects that kind of jumps out to me is, how deep they are at center. Yep. Middlestat, Asplund, Pooh, Davidson, Rodriguez, Sean Malone, Vasily Glotov. He had a nice goal with a dab through at development camp. So, I mean, he played pretty well too. So, I mean, they're really deep at center. And, looking at it, one of those guys could go, ideally, maybe to flip your depth to a prospect winger, or to bring in maybe maybe your rental at the deadline if you're a good team to get you somebody who could play next to Eichel. But they are really deep at center all of a sudden because you remember for the Sabres for a long time, their center depth was pretty poor.
The whole reason they did what they did for those 2 years.
Right, and this doesn't even mention having Eichel and O'Reilly already on your team who are 24 and 20 years old. And if you want to throw Reinhardt in, who could play center if you want him to. So, I mean, there's a lot of depth at center there. But they need some help on the wing still, particularly on the left wing, because really you have Nylander, and then it drops down to C.J. Smith, which really don't know what Smith is. But, I mean, beyond that, there's really not much there. And then your right wing, you have Bailey, Fashing, and Baptiste. So,
yeah, but guys could easily move to the wing. Like Middlestad could.
Right, Middlestad can play some left wing. He said he was drafted. Rodriguez plays some wing. I don't know if Asplund will ever go to the wing, but Pooh is a guy they could see maybe shifting to the wing.
He's probably your Larson replacement, or Gergenson's, one of the two. Asplund, that is.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. I do. Because, Larson's on that 2-year contract, so in 2 years, that it fits the timeline. When Larson's out, Asplund steps into that third-line role,
Yep, if you need those ELC contracts, so.
That's the way Bottle rolls. If you look at the Penguins, those guys step right in.
Yeah, just real quick going back to if everyone remembers how Reinhardt looked, coming in, how he needed that 1 year of just, getting himself up to NHL weight and NHL, size to be able to play and keep up. It's kind of just what Bailey and Baptiste needed. It's what Nylander did last year because he needed it, and it's what Middlestad will do in college this year. So it's not – even with how good Middlestad looked, maybe even gets an invite, but I doubt it just because he already said he was already going to college. So
yeah,
I would just expect him to, again, kind of with how they're setting things up too. They'll probably have a guy, watching him, on him, making sure he's doing what he needs to be doing, and be ready to go to fight for a spot next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. So to get to our wrap-up part here, back to the big club, I guess you could say. If we went from Rochester to Prospects, now back to the big club. There's a lot that could still – I don't think it could happen, but there's a lot of things that need to be resolved. Some of it in training camp, some of it maybe happens over the next few weeks leading up to training camp. I'll quickly run through the listings. I have my list here, then we can kind of go into them in depth. But the first things first, we kind of touch on a little bit, is that open spot in the top six. Bailey, Nylander, Fashing, Baptiste. Maybe not Fashing, he's not a top six guy, but Bailey, Nylander, and Baptiste, maybe, it's really one of those guys who need to step up in camp and take that spot. I think it almost has to be Bailey. I think it's kind of what Botterill's hoping for. If Nylander steps up and plays well, I'm sure they wouldn't be heartbroken, or even Baptiste, but I think they really, really, really want Bailey to step up into that role. You can disagree with me, but that's kind of what I think.
No. I'll just I really think that not only is it a missed opportunity, but it would be, number one, a missed opportunity 2 years in a row. And it would just be a huge disappointment if Pouliot or Pominville are one of the guys. And like I said, no offense to those guys, but we thought it was time last year, so it's definitely time this year. If you're not going to make it and crack that top six when it's just an obvious need on the club, then things are not going right and things are going wrong, because you can't have 2 years in a row of just an open spot, literally crying for one of these young kids with speed to take it and run with it and be that person to be a rookie in the league and put up 20 goals pretty easily, because you have Jack Eichel on as your center. If one of those three don't crack the top six, provided it's not Kane that's on that other wing, it's just a huge miss. It's a huge swing and a miss for the Sabres as an organization, because, like I said, if it's Pominville or somebody else in that, I just think it's another year of – and not saying Pominville can't, be adequate, but it's just going to be another year of wondering what could it have been if he had somebody that wasn't slowing him down. He wasn't waiting for it at the blue line. He wasn't getting over the blue line and stopping and waiting for everybody to kind of trail in. I think that top six spot is just so important this year, especially if they plan to kind of do anything playoff-wise.
Right. So, hey, so I was going to run through them, and I kind of stopped at one topic. So let me run through the things I have here. So I have George's as the 7, question mark. Looks like Evander Kane sticking around, which we'll both be happy about, at least for now. And there's Leonard's contract. He's coming up. I think his arbitration hearing is coming up next week, if I'm not mistaken. And then Eichel contract, which it sounds like that's going to happen this summer from the way Botterill was talking. And then Reinhardt, no contract this summer.
Which is also
He's
interesting.
right. So let's go to the easy 2, I guess we could say. George at the 7. Are you cool with that for 1 year at $3.9 million? You can live with that?
Yeah, because you don't really need the space this year. The Sabres had enough space. If they want to do anything else, they can do it pretty easily. So George is at 3.9. It's not really hurting you as a team. Everybody talks about how he's a good locker room guy, so he can hang out in the locker room. There's going to be injuries, so it'll happen. He's an adequate bottom 6 guy still for 1 more year. So I have absolutely no problem with him in the 7 spot. It's where he should be. It's where he needs to be if the team's going to be good.
I agree with you 110%. That'd be an issue at all. I mean, it's nice to have that guy there that can step in case there is an injury. So I don't have a problem with that. I mean,
he had his nights where he played all right. Like that one night, he played really well against McDavid, which was a surprise.
Yeah, the second game of the season.
yeah. So I mean, it's if he's even if he's bottom 6 playing 10 minutes a night, or he's just kind of a filler when there's injuries, or if somebody's hitting a rut and needs to get pulled, he's fine. He could fill that. He cannot be in your top 4 playing 20+ minutes a night, because that's when his flaws and his age are kind of going to be exposed.
Exactly. Evander Kane. So good news for us. So it's like he's going to start the season here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure he's probably not back next season. I don't know how that happens, whether it be trade by the deadline or they just simply let him walk. We'll see. I mean, you never know. I mean, there could be a surprise. Maybe Housley and Botterill end up falling in love with him, seeing him play, and they do resign him. I mean, if you're looking at the money, a lot of people say, well, Evander Kane, he's going to want, $6.5 million. Well, I don't know. I mean, I got Galchenyuk taking 4.9. I got Palat taking 5.3. I got Johnson taking $5 million. Are those players not at least comparable, if not better players than Evander Kane? I mean, he's not going to go to the open market and say, I want $6.5 million. People are going to go, get out of here, dude, especially with his off-ice issues and stuff.
I think what it comes down to, especially with the 3 guys you mentioned, not so much Galchenyuk, because I think that's a special situation where it's going to be a trade, sign and trade, whether it comes halfway through the season or next year. When it comes to Johnson and Palat, I think the thing you have to remember is the term. They got what they got because they were able to, get the 7 years. Johnson could probably make a little more than 5, but I don't know how many more teams are giving him 7 years for a third-line role. It's when you get – and they'll get – I'll bring up Dustin Brown here. Obviously, he's making a lot less than Dustin Brown was, but I see kind of a scenario like that. Like if he starts to lose any kind of foot speed at all in year 4 or 5, he could fall off a cliff pretty hard. So 7 years is a long time. I think you can probably get Kane for that, but I just don't know how any GM is making that risk. How are you signing a guy like Evander Kane for 7 years? We've been talking about it. Even if the Sabres were to extend him, we were talking 3 years. 4 years. Right. You're probably not doing anything really over 4. So if you're doing that, you're probably looking at, over 6 or a little bit around 6 at least. Which, I mean,
because you're right, he's not taking a pay decrease. He makes 5.25 now, so he's not going down in pay.
Right.
He's not getting a reduction.
No, and ideally he's going to have a good year again this year. He should, with the offensive talent, and ideally with the style that they're going to play, the defensemen that are going to be able to get the puck up to the forwards. And a guy like Evander Kane is a guy who's, hanging around center ice, looking for that breakaway and looking to get that odd man rush so he can fire it on the net, trying to get that quick scoring chance. I think he's going to fit really well in the system, and it's going to be hard to let him go. The thing that I'm really, tussling with myself these last couple of weeks is I don't know how you let him go for nothing. But if the team, ideally, if he's doing really well and has trade value, the team is in the hunt. And I don't know how you trade him if he has 20 goals at the deadline and the team's in the hunt. It just
unless like Nylander's tearing it up in Rochester and Bailey's like a 15-goal scorer at the deadline. Like, yeah, you're right. There's nobody else behind him on the wing.
Right. And just how does that look as team dynamic? How you're a new GM, you're coming in, how things are going to be different. And of course, winning culture, we're going to win.
Yeah.
And then if you're winning or you're at least in the hunt and then you trade, I'm guessing he'd be a top 3, top 4 scorer on the team at that point, provided he has like 20 goals or whatever. To move him off for pieces or just something else, I just don't know how
to – second round pick in the next year's draft. Like, I mean –
Right. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you pull that off. So it's kind of what I've been tussling with. And again, you can just keep him, but if he says no and just walks, like how do you defend that either? It's a really tough situation. I could see, like I said, I could see him fitting really, really well in the system, and I wouldn't mind signing him at all. I mean, Botterill's the money man, so let's see it. He should be able to sign him for 5.7, 5.6, depending on how many points he puts up this year, for 3 years, and kind of work it out. Pominville maybe puts a little bit of a dent in that, but that's only 2 years. You can kind of make it work. I mean, it really comes down to, I don't want to get ahead of us, it's the Eichel and Reinhart contracts. I think Reinhart more than Eichel.
Yeah. I mean, Eichel is, he's pretty much, I mean, he's going to get around at least $10 million probably. I don't know how long. Maybe it's going to be 8 years. Maybe it'll be 6. Maybe it'll be 7. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be a bridge deal. They're going to lock up a long time, and it's probably going to be at least 10. I mean, I think McDavid's at 13.25, but I think if you're going to get Eichel for the 8 years and get him to commit that long, even 7 years, I mean, you're going to have to be at 10, right? I mean, the only way you get less than 10, I think, is you're going to bridge deal for like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to argue with it, but I think if he's willing to come to the table and sign a contract now, I think you're basically just saying, don't worry, don't bet on yourself. We'll just give you the 10 that you want.
Just take your 10 million now and whatever.
Yeah,
because you're right. Because then he'll go, you know what? No, forget it. I'll just go into the season. I'll blow it up and I'll get 12 million next summer.
Right. Well, yeah. So I think, like I said on the last recorded podcast, I believe it was. I don't really know how, if he plays this season, I don't know how he's making less money. So I think you kind of just bite the bullet, give him what he wants now, try and do 8 years if he's willing to do that, and then you kind of just let everything else play out. I mean, 10 years or 10 for 8 years is not going to be bad at all, especially if he comes anything close to a point per game like he did last season for the amount of games that he played.
Absolutely. And then Reinhart, the other one where that's the interesting one. I mean,
especially because
there's not going to be a contract this year.
Right. Which for me is the interesting part because I think you can lock him up. I mean, even if you don't want to lock him up, if you want to do a bridge for Sam, it's not going to cost you that much. But by not doing the contract this summer,
and he has a big year.
you're kind of opening yourself up for that. For the chance that Sam has a big year, especially if he's on Eichel's wing. Say Nylander or Bailey comes up and plays really well, and that line tears up. Now you're looking at maybe 6 for Sam or something, and that's when things can get tricky. I think you could have
got Mitchell maybe for 3 or 4.
When you talk, 4. It's doing the thing, dude.
All right, I'll stop. So the other guy that you even mentioned, which makes this interesting here, is Reinhart with the no contract this summer, which I was somewhat surprised with because I think that would be easier now. But I don't know. Did it catch you off guard too with the no? Didn't want to talk to Sam at least this summer.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it would be the opposite. I thought Sam would be the one to get signed this offseason, and then Eichel would be the one to wait. I guess. I don't know. I mean, from Sam's standpoint, I think it would be pretty not easy, but you'd be able to, kind of get it on maybe a little bit less of a deal than you might if you waited. But I mean, thinking about it, maybe that's the reason why. I mean, Eichel, you kind of know already what he's going to do, what he's going to want, and if you're willing to let him bet on himself, you're probably going to lose that bet. So just get the contract done now. For Reinhart, though, maybe he's the one that said, you know what, I really don't want to talk contract. We'll talk it at the end of the next offseason because he knows that he struggled under Bilesma, and maybe under this system he believes that he'll be able to do better, especially with the defense kind of being engaged in the offense. Maybe Sam was the one to kind of take it and bet on himself and try to get 5.5 instead of maybe 4.5. And ideally, if they find that other winger for this year, whether that be Nylander, Baptiste, Bailey, or Kane, Reinhart could have a good year, surprisingly good year for most, especially with some of the hate that he got last year.
Right, and it's now, as I said too, it seems like it's a much easier contract to do now. I mean, you can maybe the reason they're not doing a contract is Reinhart could be doing what we thought Eichel was going to do. Maybe Potter will approach the subject with his agent, and maybe he kind of expressed, Sam wants to prove himself this year, and maybe that's the logical thing for Reinhart. You're coming off, I don't want to say the down year because he had more points than the year before, but I guess not what everybody expected year, and
I will say this, not to set not to set the little fires on Sabres Twitter ablaze, but on the other hand, maybe it was Botterill. Maybe it was Botterill that wanted to see 1 year of Reinhart in the system to make sure that he could fit. And maybe you want to see that, that one really good year out of Sam before he signs him to anything long term.
Yeah, right. So the last contract left that I want to touch on here is Leonard. You and I are Team Leonard guys, so we don't mind giving that money. But just a little bit ago, I think I don't know the exact date, but I think his arbitration hearing date is coming up. I would imagine it gets hammered out before that. The Larson deal is done, who has the same agent as Leonard. And both the agent and Botterill a couple weeks ago sound optimistic they would get something done. But for me, I mean, I think it's going to be a short deal, 2 years, and I don't know what, between 4 and 4.5 probably. I thought it'd be closer to 4 until that Mason deal came in, and maybe that kind of jacked it back up here when he went to Winnipeg. So I think 2 years, 4.5, kind of makes sense to me, and that's not really a lot for a starting goaltender, especially a guy who played with above average numbers.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I think if you think about it, it's right where we've been kind of the whole offseason, or at least going into the offseason. I mean, you give him that 2-year deal, 4.5, not that much for a starting goaltender. And for all those who aren't, as Chad put it, Team Leonard, I don't know if we necessarily need to be Team Leonard. We're just defending that his stats aren't as bad as everybody makes him out to be. And,
right.
And he's not as bad as everyone makes him out to be. But again, easy 2-year contract, $4.5 million. You can move that contract. You can move away from that contract. And you can do kind of whatever you want to, whether that be trading for a goalie, all mark, maybe up's really good. Who knows? But
yep.
Depending on it's a contract that's short, sweet, gives you flexibility. If Leonard turns out to be really good, you can sign him to long-term afterwards. If he doesn't, or if Leonard isn't necessarily the goalie you want to move forward with, you still need a goalie to play for the next 2 years. So, and I hate to break it to everybody, but Allmark is not that guy, and neither is Chad Johnson. So you need somebody that's a bona fide starter in this league to play for the team. Leonard can do that. He's shown that he can do that. So 2 years isn't going to hurt anybody. And I think it's going to be pretty easy, done deal in the next week here.
Yeah, I agree. So as you got a lot in, you talked about a lot. You're, I don't think we were actually that rusty. I was kind of impressed with how out our game worked for taking a couple of weeks off and escaping the hockey world here. But
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We listen back exactly how right now you were. But I'll do the rigmarole here at the end. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at BTB Hockey and on Facebook. Subscribe, rate, share on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play. We're still on the Hockey Writers podcast channel, so there too. And then, like I mentioned earlier in the show, we are now on the Grandstand Sports Network, so you can catch us there when that goes live, which should be within the next week or two. So definitely look out for that. And yeah, I think that's really it. I think again we're going to take a little break here. As I said, this podcast is over. I'm going back into vacation mode. So I think we'll take 2-ish weeks, maybe 3. And then get back together early to mid-August. Sound good to you, Bill?
Maybe we'll do a mini pod. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe depending on what happens. Maybe we'll have one of those. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a fun podcast in here doing something. Maybe it won't be hockey related. We'll. I don't know. We'll think of something. Maybe we'll get bored one day. You never know. Something could happen. Maybe if the Eichel contract comes out, we'll do a mini pod on that. There you go. Maybe that could be our
Eichel contract with the C.
Do they hand him, when they have the press conference, do they hand him a sweater with his contract and the C already on it?
McDavid style. Not
exactly.
Really,
exactly.
Yeah, maybe. So, I mean, I could see that definitely happening. So maybe that's when maybe Leonard gets traded and 3/4 of Sabres Twitter rejoices.
Right.
So, yeah, anything can happen. We'll probably come back in a couple of weeks here, but it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, if something does happen, like if Evander Kane gets traded, we'll be back. We're not just going to completely block the world out. So I don't see anything big happening at this point. A lot of general managers are on vacation. But if something was to happen, we definitely would come back. So for Bill and Chad, we are out of here this week. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Everybody enjoy their summer. Stay safe. And, yeah, we'll be talking hockey soon here. We have Prospect Challenge in the beginning of September. So before the blink of an eye, Bill, we'll be talking Prospect Challenge and training camp, believe it or not.
Yeah, can't wait. Prospect Challenge should be fun, and training camp is where it all starts. So fighting for those couple roster spots, and it should be interesting, especially with the new coaching staff. So a lot of things to look forward to coming up here as the summer keeps on rolling on.
Yes, sir. So we will talk to you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later.
See ya.